I'll tell you what, man. I love his call. He's been doing it with the Flyers since, 1997. So let's go to the Barb's Harley-Davidson Sports Hotline and welcome into the locker room the radio voice of the Philadelphia Flyers, Tim Saunders. What's up, Timmy?
What's up, guys? How are you?
All right, Good. Tim. Two big wins, man. We're getting pumped up here in the locker room.
I got to tell you, you know who you sound like. Geez, one of the first guys I ever worked with. You got a little Dickie Vitale going.
Wow.
Little Dickie V.
I'll tell you a story. When I was in high school and working on a sports talk show in Detroit, and this was before Dickie V joined the Pistons and way before ESPN, and he was co-hosting occasionally a sports talk show in Detroit, and obviously was well versed in basketball. He had been the coach at USD, University of Detroit. But whenever a hockey question would come on, he literally had no clue. And I was in the studio. I would whisper answers into his ear that he would just regurgitate.
I hope you're not comparing me that way.
No. You
that's true, too.
Hey, Tim, I got to ask you, people ask the players all the time, well, what's it like not playing in front of fans, and what's it like, being in the bubble? But what's it like for an announcer? How hard must it have been for you, especially last year when you were the Wells Fargo Center calling the games? They were in the bubble. How difficult was that?
Well, and we're going to be in that same boat when they're on the road because no local broadcasters are allowed to travel this year, so they're going to do it off of monitors. Home games are more close to normal, and to be honest, once you're calling the game, you don't get too distracted by the lack of crowd because you're thinking of other things. But doing it off of a monitor, I describe it as doing a game with one eye tied behind your back. You have no idea how many different things you look for in calling a game, and now when you're doing it off a monitor, it's really restricting.
Timmy, we had Mike Emmerich on the show not too long ago. Actually, a week after he retired, we were honored to have him on, and was amazed at the number of adjectives he uses and the preparation for games that he goes through or he went through to prepare. You're in the radio booth. It's a little bit more difficult for you because you got to describe the action for someone that can't see it. They're just listening to you.
Well, first of all, Doc is, of course, one of the all-time greats. Yeah. He comes from and still lives in a little town north of Detroit, St. Clair, Michigan, which is not far from where I grew up. And my gosh, he's done it for so long, and that was his calling card. He had 12 million different ways to say the same thing, and people loved him and loved his call, and couldn't be a nicer man, about the nicest man you'd ever come across. And now that I say that, I can't remember what your damn question was.
No, I was wondering, the preparation that's involved, and it's a little bit harder for a radio guy to call the action because you got to describe it in a way that the fans can visualize it. They're not seeing the game, so I think it's harder, obviously, to call a game on the radio than it would be on television.
Well, I'll tell you a secret if you promise to keep it just between us. Calling hockey, I think, is the easiest sport. And the reason is all you have to do is be able to talk fast and describe what's going on in front of you. Honestly, football, baseball, I think is more of a challenge because you have constant holes you got to fill. But in hockey, just, all you got to do is call the game that's going on in front of you. And that, I think, makes it easier. Now, the prep part of it is the part that very few people understand. And every guy's got his own system and routine as far as what you're going to prep and so on and so forth. But I typically say you probably prep 3 times as long time-wise as it takes to call a game. So if a typical game is 3 hours, I mean, you do the math work. And honestly, you never know how much of what you prep is going to get into the broadcast. You might use 10% of what you've worked on as far as preparation in the game, but you don't know what 10% you're going to use. And to me, you lose the ability to relax and enjoy doing it if you haven't put the time in and prepped for all the potential things that could come up in a game. So, like I said, everybody's got their own routine and their own system, but I learned a long time ago, even from players, and I think good players will tell you this, that they figure out the best way that they can get themselves prepared, no matter what the routine is, and then you stick to that routine religiously.
All right, absolutely. And that's Timmy. It's Scotty McKay. How are you, bud?
Good, Scotty. How are you, buddy?
Good. It's. I don't think people realize how much preparation that you guys do, and you just gave a great example of it. But let's get into the meat of this thing with what the team's doing right now. We're in a weird situation with COVID, and things have changed. What do you think the shortened 56 game season? Do you think it's going to benefit the Flyers, or do you think it's going to hinder them in some way to pushing towards a cup?
Well, I think it's kind of hard to say it's going to be an advantage or a disadvantage for any one team because they're all dealing with pretty much the same thing. Obviously, a shorter season makes every game a little bit more important. I love the fact that they're seeing the same teams within their division over and over because that's going to make for some emotional, hockey. Familiarity breeds contempt kind of thing. And you're going to build up animosity that's going to come out on the ice. So that itself is a good thing. But, things have got to go your way and you can't be too quick to judge. I mean, if you go back to the bubble over the summer, remember the Flyers won those first three kind of warm-up games against the other top four teams in the Eastern Conference. And then they were seemingly a different team once the real playoffs started. So I'm kind of hesitant to jump to any conclusions on the first two games. Great that they won the first two games. To be honest with you, they were probably outplayed for large stretches of those first two, but plenty to build on. And it's going to be exciting to watch this team just because of how deep they are.
We're talking with Tim Saunders, the radio voice of the Philadelphia Flyers. You catch Tim and Steve Coates all season long on 97.3 ESPN and the mobile app. You have to call the game, the Flyers broadcast. And Tim, what Scotty and I were talking about last night while we were watching the game is we love the youth, the combination of youth and the veterans of this team. We had Chuck Fletcher on with us too last year, and we said the same thing. But their defense and I think this team is really starting to gel. And I think it's good that you have a combination of grizzled veterans and youth.
Well, I think that's necessary, right? You gotta find that mix because if you got too many kids, now you're learning on the job and hard to help each other out. You got to have that mix of veterans and younger guys. If you get a team that's too old, and this is the challenge when you win a cup. If you've won the cup or you've had some success in the playoffs, GMs are reluctant to, move on from guys who they've had success with. And that's a hard thing to do, but you got to keep fresh legs coming in. The thing I liked about Chuck's off season was, they built this great group of prospects, but you block them if you go get veteran players, whether it's free agent or trade, and you put guys ahead of them. So this youth that you build up can't get into the lineup. They don't have an opportunity, to grow into jobs. So he knew he was, fingers crossed he was going to get Patrick and Lundblom back. That's like adding two big free agents anyway. And he did go out and get a bunch of veterans that were going to block the kids. And, this team is not built on star power. Unlike the Pittsburgh Penguins, who can throw out Malkin and Crosby, the fact is the Flyers just don't have those stars. They've got a couple of guys that are pretty close, but they go as deep in their lineup right now as any team in the NHL.
Yeah,
when you got a fourth line of Raffle, Scotty Lawton, and Obey Cubell, I mean, that tells you that this team, if they stay healthy, is going to be really hard to play.
Well, Timmy, it's kind of like the St. Louis Blues from a couple years ago. Try to pick a superstar in that lineup. There really wasn't anybody that stood out tremendously. So, teams that have just a good core of group guys that play together and play hard. Role players that make a difference. But, we'd be remiss. Billy and I talked about this a little earlier. I just said to him, do you realize that 2 games into his second season as a head coach that Alain Vigneault is the most tenured coach in Philadelphia sports right now? How much of an impact do you think this coaching staff has had on the success of this team?
Well, I think AV's had a huge impact. I mean, he's got a winning pedigree. He demands instant credibility and respect from players. And the word that they all use in describing playing for Alain Vigneault is accountability. Doesn't matter who you are. You could be a first-line star or you could be, a fourth-line plugger. He's going to hold you to the same standard in how you play the game as he does anybody else. And, he'll challenge veterans if necessary. Now, he does it in the right way. Doesn't do it publicly. Doesn't embarrass them in front of their teammates. But the ultimate hammer a coach has is playing time, and you're going to have to earn your playing time with this guy.
Yeah, we like Coach Vigneault. I mean, Scooter and I went to a couple practices last year, and we did from the moment we walked in, we noticed the up-paced, the pace of the practice. The guy, there was no standing around. Everybody was moving and shaking, and we're looking for bright things for this team. We're all excited. We really appreciate you coming on, Tim, and look for your call all season long right here on 97.3 ESPN. You and Coatsy make a good pair.
Guys, we love having you guys aboard as an affiliate, and love talking to you anytime.
All right, there's Tim Saunders, radio voice of the Philadelphia Flyers on the Barb's Harley Davidson Sports Hotline.